Hey friends, this is Marilyn from tarotclarity.com, and today's video will be, as I mentioned yesterday, a demonstration reading using the Mystical Medleys tarot deck that I featured in yesterday's video. Before I do that, I do want to mention that for those of you who are interested in anything regarding the medieval Scapini Tarot and what the book might have to say about any of the cards, I do have the book. And I know this book is extremely difficult to get a hold of. I've seen it selling for upwards of $200 and $300, which is a shame because it only costs $12. But at any rate, if you have any questions about the medieval Scapini and what Decker has to say, Ronald Decker is the author of this book that was created for the deck. Just ask me, and I live for this stuff. I'll be more than happy to look up anything that you want to know in regards to the deck and what the book has to say. And before I do the reading, I just want to reiterate how unfortunate this cardstock is. I mean, I know all tarot decks are cardboard essentially, unless you buy plastic decks. So by my saying yesterday that it feels like cardboard, I guess it doesn't make any sense because after all, the highest quality decks are made of cardboard or paper, quality paper. But this just, look how it's just so big. It's like impossible for me, and I have long fingers. It's really hard to shuffle this deck, riffle shuffle. And even though I am not prone to riffle shuffling, I typically shuffle this way. I know a lot of you riffle shuffle, and it's not a good candidate for it. So what I had to do was, break it into sections, shuffle half together, then the other half together, and then try to mix it up all together. Anyway, it was complicated. Okay, so I do love the art. I think the art is wonderful on this deck. And yesterday, as I was reviewing it, I just decided that I really needed to do a reading using it. Now, I know that this page, this, YouTube channel rather, focuses on historic tarot decks. I do have some novelty decks, which I have featured from time to time. And although I do love the historic decks, and I hope you come to me for the historic decks, I think there's a time and place for intelligent, witty options. I mean, I don't think I would get that from a buggy or fairy kind of, tarot deck, at least not I personally. But this deck, I love the artwork. The artwork is so awesome that I could just tell that it will deliver. It will deliver a message with a wry smile, with I don't know, with an edge. Now, I mentioned yesterday that this deck is similar to cartoons I watched as a kid, and I'm not that old. I mean, the cartoons I'm referencing were I guess they were the Fleischer Brothers animated cartoons, also reminiscent of the Warner Brothers Merry Melodies cartoons from the 30s. Now, I wasn't born in the 30s, but my mother was. And as a kid growing up, those were the cartoons that they played on television, And I think my parents also had, projectors with these cartoons. So these are the kind of images that I grew up with. So I have a special appreciation for the imagery, even though, it's new art, but boy, it's seamlessly recreated. So let me continue to shuffle off camera as I do, and go into my space as I ask the cards, or I ask the universe and my for the answer that it's willing to give me, and my higher self to concentrate well, and to ask my higher self to allow me to interpret what the universe allows me to see for the best possible outcome. So give me a minute and I'll be back. Okay, so I've done that, and I'm just going to do a couple shuffles so I haven't pre-staged the cards that I'm about to lay down. My question is, and here's a little bit of insight. My husband and I are going through some challenging times. We recently learned that he has cancer. And now I have, through a routine mammogram, it's been discovered that I also have a need for a biopsy. And we're hoping that, of course, that the biopsy results are favorable. I tell you this because it's where my head is at. What are the odds of both of us having cancer at the same time? It's like, really? Thank you, universe. But, at the same time, the universe gives us what we can handle, and we have to figure out how to do it. And so I asked the universe to give me some guidance, what it is, that I have to, what can I think I'm just asking the universe what it wants me to know. And I ask my higher self to be able to interpret the cards in the most meaningful way. I'm just going to lay 3 cards for this. Now you can see, how hard it is to handle these cards. Well, there's some challenges, right? We have, the Five of Cups, the 10 of Wands, and Judgment. Well, I think it's a time of, definitely brace ourselves for some hard times, because that's what it looks like. And although Judgment is, it's not as solemn as the Death card, it can be wonderful. It can be an announcement. It can be seeing things clearly. It can have a few meanings depending on the context of the question. And so I guess, as regards myself, at the moment where my head is it's in a place where I feel sorrow and some burden, but it's possible that my biopsy will be clear and a time of rejoicing. So it's possible that I can understand this to be all this worrying will come to good news and not to worry. And so I'm hoping that that is the way it goes. Now, in the event that the biopsy indicates an unfavorable outcome, then the Judgment card, could just be referencing, get my shit in order, I guess. I don't want to think along those lines. And if I was reading this for someone else, I wouldn't say that. If I was reading this for someone else, I would say, despite the heavy weight or the burden, or the grief that you're experiencing, and both of you, being the couple being sick, or having the possibility that both of you have something serious like cancer, that the outcome will be wonderful for both of you, or the outcome will be something that you can handle. And that's how I'm going to read it for myself, because that's how I would read it for someone else. and this is another reason why sometimes it's hard to do readings for yourself, because you're so personally involved. And, if your head is in a dark place, you might see this as a dark card, But but I wouldn't normally see this as a dark card, and so I don't want to do that to myself, Let's take a look at what the quint might be. So we have a 5 and a 10, which would be 15, and 20, which would be 35 minus 22. And I think that gives us 35 minus 22 would give us the star card. Wow. Okay. Well, I'm glad I did the quint. Let me pause and pull the star card. Okay, here we have the star card as the quintessential card. So in combination with the judgment card and the star card being the quint card, despite the melancholy place we're in, and we're both in this place because now he's worried about me, I've been worried about him, we're worried about ourselves, it's a heavy burden to imagine that we both might have cancer at the same time. I mean, who the hell wants that kind of news? But having drawn the judgment card and then the star card being the quint card, even if the news is unfavorable, it's not something that we can't that we can't handle. The star card being a most favorable card, means that, I think in combination with judgment is that we can handle the news. If this is news, we can handle the news. And on the more optimistic side, the news might actually be favorable. We already know that my husband has, the cancer, and so that's a given. But his treatment options and prognosis look good, and I'm taking it to mean that this will be the same for me. And I'm glad I read these cards, because when I first saw these two cards in combination with this card, my head went into a dark place, because after all, they are dead people in a coffin, But I wouldn't read that for someone else, and so why shouldn't I extend that same positive vibe, thinking for myself, which is why I wanted to do the quint card. And it reinforces that things will be okay. And I'm really glad that I did this reading with these cards, which are kind of, quirky, because it really has lifted my spirits and given me hope, that I should not despair, and we should not despair. And I hope this reading has been helpful to you as well in just seeing how they might be read, even for a serious question. Let's do another one. I'll do another one. And this one I'm not going to go off camera for. I'm just going to concentrate. And it'll be for a lighthearted question. My daughter and I, we celebrate Witchmas. And typically we celebrate it during the autumnal equinox. I know a lot of people celebrate Witchmas over the Yuletide, but we don't. We just decided for us that we prefer to do it over the autumnal equinox. So that's when we celebrate Witchmas. And I'll be going to her new haunted house, which is 100 years old. But I'll be spending the day and night at their house, to just like witness some of the shenanigans that the house gives, which the house is very active. I mentioned it to you before in a previous reading. And just want to know what some of the activities we might do during Witchmas this year. Usually, we always have a schedule of events that we do together. And let's see if we can get some insight or some ideas for what we might do during Witchmas. So I ask the universe to give me some great ideas. And I ask my higher self to give me the wisdom to make sense of the information I'm granted to see. I'm just going to pull 3 cards for this. Oh, I left the squirrel cards in. I'm not really sure what to do with those. I should have been more careful and pulled it out. So we have the spread is dominated by men, and both of pentacles. So the man of the house, maybe we'll get my son-in-law involved, although I don't think he'll be home that day. Or it could be old Willie, who lived there previously. We could focus on him and the sad squirrel. Because I really don't know what to do with the sad squirrel, I'm going to put this card aside and ask the universe to forgive me for that. And I'll just pull the next card. Wow, the 9 of Pentacles. Okay, so, you know, it is focused on the home and focused on, I'm going to say, any activity we may experience, I'm going to say, is going to be male. Perhaps it'll be old Willie and involving my son-in-law, who is a young man, and old Willie, who is the former resident of the property, who lived to be, I don't know, 90 years old. So he was very old. And do gardening or just do restoration to the house. I know my son-in-law has been laying new floors and they're getting, you know, electricity done. So the focus has been on bringing the house up to code. And because old Willie neglected many things in his older years. I mean, he was, you know, 89 or 90 or something like that when he passed away. And so the house went beyond what he was able to do to keep up. And so the young man who's coming in, my son-in-law, has been fervently, you know, laying new floors and making upgrades to the property. You know, physically, he's a carpenter, so he's able to do those things. And the 9 of Pentacles really does look like, you know, beautifying the home. So in accordance with these cards, I would think that we're just going to work on beautifying the home, working on the home. All these cards are pentacles. And I think that's our answer, is to focus on the home. So that's what we're going to do. We're just going to do things, home improvement projects, any little project, maybe tapping into, we're going to definitely use spirit dice. And I'm sure we'll try to communicate because that's what we do. But we'll focus on, you know, we'll focus on old Willie if we do that. And certainly we'll focus on, you know, home projects to make the home a home, you know, which it is. They're settling in really nicely. And although they definitely have a lot of activity in that house, they're never scared or anything like that. Okay, friends, so I hope this reading has been helpful to you. If you guys know what I'm supposed to do with the sad squirrel and the happy squirrel, I guess I can read about it myself. I certainly will never leave them in the deck next time, but since I did, I just have to work around. Until next time, friends, peace and stay well.